Good Wednesday evening, everyone. I want to give you all an update on the coming Arctic front arriving in about 24 hours or so. Wow, it's hard to believe. It seems like we've been talking about this for a month. Recent changes to the forecast. We're trending colder. That just continues to be the theme. We keep trending colder. We're now going to go below zero by Friday morning. The timing of the front is now a narrower 2-hour time frame between 8 and 10 p.m. I've mentioned this in the last couple of updates, but for those of you who may have missed that, I've had a lot of questions this evening about that. Between 8 and 10 p.m., the front will be approaching or crossing the plateau. A winter weather advisory has now been issued by the National Weather Service for Thursday night. That's in anticipation of that light snow that I've been talking about. A wind advisory will likely be issued by the Weather Service. They mentioned that this evening for Thursday night with the passage of that Arctic front and for the few hours of time afterwards where winds could gust to 35, possibly up to 40 miles per hour. Thereafter, winds will die down to gusting to 20 to 25 miles per hour. And those wind gusts will be with us as it looks right now through Friday night. So the Arctic air will approach from the west-northwest. I've talked about how the Arctic air is very thin, shallow, very dense. It's like syrup coming across the Earth's surface. So when it encounters an obstacle like the Cumberland Plateau, it slows down. So it'll come through Cookeville, and then you'll notice that it's going to take it a little longer to get from, let's say, Cookeville to Crossville than it did from Lebanon to Cookeville. So it'll be moving across Middle Tennessee at a certain speed, but then when it encounters the Cumberland Plateau, which is quite the obstacle, especially more so since it's been coming down through Illinois and Indiana, it's going to take it a little while to get across the plateau. So it'll build up some momentum and it'll finally get enough cold air built up behind it to where it can push across the plateau and get across this obstacle. That's one reason why our temperature drop is going to be so dramatic. Everyone's going to experience a dramatic temperature drop, but ours may be even more pronounced than, say, folks to our west. Then it'll spill into the valley of East Tennessee. Then it gets hung up on the Appalachian Mountains. And this Arctic air is so dense and so shallow, it just cannot get across the Appalachian Mountains. So some of the colder air will, but the most dense, the core of the Arctic air won't. So folks over in the Carolinas and Virginia, they get highs in the 30s for Christmas weekend and lows in the teens, whereas we'll be highs in the single digits, to around 10ish on Saturday, 10 to 13. They're in the 30s in the Carolinas. So if you want a much warmer Christmas, get on the other side of those mountains where it's going to be balmy compared to what we're going to be. So my timeline has not changed that much. Just in case you've missed it, though, 8 to 10 p.m. tomorrow night is when we're expecting that Arctic front to be approaching and or crossing the Cumberland Plateau. I say that to tell you this. Be home by 8 p.m. Thursday. And if you want to play it a little safer than everybody else, be home by 6 or 7. Don't be out, though, after 8. I just don't recommend it. One of my number one concerns, what I expressed to the emergency management folks today, one of my number one concerns are folks being stuck on those roads when that Arctic front comes through. Because any water we have on the roadway from the rain that we get on Thursday and just ahead of the front is going to flash freeze. The road is already cold. It's been cold here for a while now. The ground temperatures are getting very chilly. Once that Arctic front passes and we go from the 40s to the single digits in a matter of, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours. My goodness, and if you've ended up in a situation on the roadway where you've slid off the road or whatnot because the snow came down, and it could come down in burst. Snowfall usually does come down very heavily right at the frontal passage, just immediately behind it, and you think, oh my gosh, we're going to get the biggest snow ever because it can pour down. Just as soon as you think we're going to get buried under snow, it's gone. So it turns to flurries, and then we deal with those flurries all the way through Friday morning at least. So that cold air really squeezes the moisture all out of the air. So after that, though, so we can have very hazardous road conditions Thursday night when this front passes. You do not want to be caught out there in that. Then we just deal with dangerously cold air through the Christmas weekend. So here's the 5-day forecast. Look at that. 47 for a high on Thursday, -5 Thursday night. I don't think I've ever forecast a temperature drop that extreme here on the plateau. 7 for Friday, then -5 again on Friday night, and then Saturday we recover to 13. Then we start taking 10-degree jumps. to 23, and then possibly even getting above freezing on Monday for just a short time frame. And then for sure getting above freezing on Tuesday, where we really start a good warm up into next week. So that's why you live in the South. You know, these cold spells, they can be rough, but they're not for extended periods of time. We usually get through this. I'm going to tell you this, Thursday night to Sunday is long enough for me for this kind of air. This is just a little too cold, just a little too much. I don't like the dangerously cold stuff, and I don't think you do either. So just be careful, folks, and be mindful of just how serious this is. This is not your normal typical cold front. This is an Arctic blast that is unlike something we've seen in many years. So we want to make sure that we emphasize that very heavily. I will be tracking this all day tomorrow. I'll have another update in the morning, and then I'll update as needed throughout the day. You just keep it right here to meteorologistmark.com.